Transylvania. The moon overhead is swollen, pregnant. Its pale ghostly light bathes the countryside. Creatures of the night come alive beneath its watchful gaze. Bats screech and wolves howl. There is a scourge that plagues this land, its deadly tendrils creeping through the darkness, a shadow on the hunt for sustenance, for life, for blood. High above the mist-shrouded valley looms a monolithic structure clinging to the rocky crags as would a gargoyle, an ancient castle whose ruined turrets and battlements pierce the black sky like the jagged and rotted teeth of a corpse. Within those haunted halls, a specter lurks, rising nightly from dust dirt to revel in its dark compulsions. A warrior, the blood of heroes coursing through its veins, and rage simmering beneath the red light of its eyes. Gaunt and cruel looking, with pointed ears and sharp teeth. Ready, always ready to bite, to drink, to infect and spread its foul disease. Is this creature man or monster? It is neither. It is a vampire. It is Dracula. What's up, everybody? My name is Brad and welcome back to the channel. Today we're back with another book review, and if you couldn't tell by the intro, today we're going to be talking about Dracula by Bram Stoker. This was the January read-along for the channel. It was my first time ever reading Dracula, and I'm definitely glad I read the book. I thought it was good. Some parts I really enjoyed, some parts not so much. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into my thoughts and feelings and everything about the book. I did write a Goodreads review already, but this video is just going to sort of be off the cuff, going along, probably a little bit rambly, giving my thoughts and everything about the book. There will be sort of minor spoilers ahead. I'm not really going to dive into the plot. I think everyone is sort of familiar with the plot about what's going on, but I'm going to talk about some specific scenes in the book that I really enjoyed. So if you've never read it, don't want any kind of spoilers at all, maybe go read the book, come back later on and watch it. Let's go ahead and dive into my thoughts and feelings and everything about Dracula. All right, so Dracula, it's told in epistolatory format. So it's all these letters and diary entries, journals, newspaper clippings, all combined into this cohesive story, told in chronological order from the perspectives of all these different characters involved. It felt very much like a found footage film, sort of a found footage book, the way it was told. And I think that really lended to the storytelling, to the horror of it all. You're reading these past events that have already occurred, sort of getting the history of it. I really dug the way it was told, and the book started off extremely strong with the journal entries from Jonathan Harker and his journey to Castle Dracula, and then his time spent in the castle and his different conversations with Dracula himself. I thought it was funny along the way when he would encounter the villagers. He didn't really realize what was going on. They would give him the evil eye, sort of the warding off gesture, but it was like the rock and roll, the devil horns, which I thought was kind of funny. But those opening chapters, there's a great creepiness to them. There's a great atmosphere, this dark, creepy atmosphere. There's this mounting sense of dread journeying to the castle that Harker doesn't really understand. And when he gets in the castle and his time spent with the Count, everything starts off okay, but he slowly realizes that something's not quite right, and there's sort of the deterioration of that relationship between the two, and then it escalates from there. I really enjoyed how the book started off. It felt very modern, I think you could say, in a technical aspect. The way it was written, the structure of it, the language that was used, the wording felt very modern. I'm not big on classic books because a lot of the time the way it's written, the language used, really a lot of times it sort of goes over my head and I don't really understand what's going on. In most classics I read, I'll have to reread certain passages and sort of read between the lines to figure out what the author is trying to convey. That did not happen at all with Dracula. So in a technical sense, this felt very modern in the way it was written. But on the flip side of that, there are some things that did not age so well. This book, it was first published in 1897, I think. Yeah, 1897. So it's, 125 some odd years old. So from a technical aspect, it felt very modern, but some of the things within the book did not age so well. And that's really no fault of the book or the author. This was written in a different time than we are in now, and we've really advanced a lot since then. But the main thing that did not age well was the women characters, the female characters, and the way that they are portrayed. They're very much damsel in distress. Lucy and Mina are the main ones I'm talking about. They're very much a damsel in distress, very delicate. They need the strong man to come and save the day, to lean upon the strong man to help them with their woes and their sorrows. And it even comes to the point where the characters don't want to share information with Mina that she really needs to be in on because she's too delicate. They don't want to burden her with this information because she won't be able to handle it like the strong men can. And it didn't really bother me so much that the characters were written this way because, again, it was the time and place when Stoker was alive, how society was different back then. But what bothered me is it was sort of harped upon. It was just over and over and over again, these reminders about the women are fragile, they're weak, they need the help of the strong men. It just harped on it too much, and it got to be sort of eye-rolly, kind of annoying at one point. So there's one point near the end of the book where Dr. Van Helsing, and I'm not going to quote it verbatim, I don't remember the quote, but something along the lines of Mina Harker, she is putting all these pieces and clues together, putting this narrative together, figuring out what is actually going on with Dracula. And Dr. Van Helsing comments on how smart she is, but he can't just give her the compliment. It's she's so smart, she must have the brain of a man. So even her smarts were, she was too smart for a woman, so she must have the brain of a man, which it kind of made me chuckle, like in an eye-rolly kind of way. And speaking of Van Helsing, I think he was my least favorite character in the book. He just talked too freaking much. It was just on and on. He was so wordy with all of his compliments and his apologies and everything. It was just, please get to the point. The way Van Helsing is in here is very much different than you see him in a lot of the adaptations. He's sort of old. He's kind of fragile in a way. He just talks nonstop. I just really wanted him to shut up and get to the point, especially at the end. It was really dragging at the end. Just his dialogue was just too much. He just needed to be quiet and get to the point. And that's another thing with the pacing was sort of up and down throughout this book. It started off really strong with Jonathan Harker and Dracula in the castle. But once we left the castle and got to the diary entries between Lucy and Mina, the pacing just came to like this screeching halt. And from there, throughout the rest of the book, we had our ups and downs, our highs and our lows. But there was a lot of lull. There was a lot of slow downtime in the book. And it never really recaptured the magic of that pacing that happened at the beginning of the book throughout the rest of it. But there are some fantastic scenes along the way. Like I said, I really like the intro with Jonathan Harker and the castle. I think my favorite scene throughout the entire book was the journal entry from the Russian ship captain on the Demeter who ferried Dracula across the water towards London, to the shores of London. That was very much like a slasher sort of horror film, writing in his journal entry about how the crew's slowly disappearing one by one. There's sort of this mysterious figure on board that some of the crew see, but they can't find anybody when they search the ship, and the ship is surrounded in this fog, this mist. That, and then plus the perspective of the people on shore watching the ship approach, watching it sort of crash up onto the beach, surrounded by this fog, and this big wolf leaps off. That was probably my favorite scene in the book. I really enjoyed that scene. I think they're actually making that particular part into a movie. I looked up, maybe coming out this year, maybe next year. But yeah, that scene was great. The scene where they are breaking into Lucy's crypt was great. Lots of other fantastic scenes along the way. Renfield, every time Renfield was on the page, I really enjoyed his things. So very much some highs and then some lows with the dialogue. The conversations went on a bit too long for me. They lulled and drug down the pacing of the overall narrative. The story itself, the bare bones of the story, is great and fantastic. I feel like it could have been trimmed down some. It's about 350 pages. My edition, I feel like easily 50 pages could have been cut out. A lot of the dialogue just really drug down the pacing for me. But back to Renfield, I want to talk about him. He was a really cool, interesting character. I really liked getting into his mind. And he is wanting to sort of consume the lives of other creatures. Not necessarily their souls, but just consume their lives, which I thought was an interesting psychological kind of thing to think about. He'll collect all these flies, and then he'll collect spiders to eat all the flies. And then at one point he got a bird that ate all the spiders, and then he ate the bird. So not only did he eat the life of the bird, but in his thinking, that bird had eaten all the spiders, who had in turn eaten all the flies. So him eating the bird had consumed all these different little life forms. I just thought it was very interesting when he was on screen. A very different character from all the other ones, but very interesting and fun nonetheless. He might have been my favorite character throughout the book. And then Dracula himself, it's called Dracula, but Dracula's not in the book very much. We don't ever get anything from his perspective. We only see Dracula when other characters encounter Dracula, which I found kind of odd, but also appreciated at the same time, because it's like the monster in the movie. If you show them off too much, they lose their effectiveness of being scary. So you don't want to show Dracula off too much. I wish we would have gotten more from Dracula, since it is called Dracula. We really got a bunch of him at the beginning, and then other than that, we really didn't see him unless he was like in animal form, or maybe see him in the room before he flees out the window. I didn't really get too much with Dracula himself, and I'm like 50-50 on that. At one point I wanted more, but the part, don't show your hand too much because it makes the monster less effective. So overall, I thought Dracula was good. It had some really fantastic aspects to it, some other things not so much. Mainly my main issue is the pacing was very slow at times, and was just very wordy, very long-winded with a lot of the dialogue. But I'm very glad I read the book. I very much appreciate what Dracula and Bram Stoker did for vampires as sort of this cultural phenomenon. Whether you like it or not, there would be no, there'd be no Twilight, there'd be no Blade movies, there would be no Anne Rice books, Salem's Lot would not exist. Vampires as we know them would not exist without this book. And Salem's Lot, it's my favorite Stephen King book, and I don't remember if he says it in like the after forward, the author's notes, or if it was just in an interview somewhere. But basically his main inspiration was Dracula, and he said, what would happen if Dracula came to America in the 20th century, and that is what happened in Salem's Lot. So I'm very much appreciative of it. I think every horror fan should read it. I don't think it's you get your horror card taken away if you have not read it kind of thing. But I think if you're a fan of horror, I think you should read it at least once and appreciate what it has done for horror, what it has done for vampires specifically. Like I said, the bare bones of the story is a fantastic horror story. There was just some fat that could have been trimmed from it along the way. Overall, like I said, I thought it was good. I gave it 3 stars. Definitely glad I read it for sure. But this has been my review of Dracula by Bram Stoker. If you've read Dracula, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Let me know what your thoughts are down below. That's all I have for you guys today, so thank you for spending your time with me. Again, my name is Brad, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.